Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, and if this is your first time here, welcome. This is Essential Patience and I am Patience. In today's video, we are talking about index funds. If you've been watching my videos over the past few months, you know that I always talk about index funds when it comes to what you should invest in or what I invest in. I think index funds are really good, but today we are going to go deeper into it. So if you have not heard of index funds, if you don't know much about it, welcome to the introduction to index funds. This is just me giving you information that I know and I've researched about index funds. Just know that I'll add some resources and my sources in the description box. Go there, learn about it. I'm not telling you to invest in anything. This is just my opinion only. Do your research and see how you can use index funds to build your financial future. Without wasting any more time, let's get into the video. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get into the introduction to index funds. According to Investopedia, an index fund is a type of mutual fund or an exchange traded fund, which is an ETF, with a portfolio constructed or matched to track the components of a financial market index, such as the S&P 500. An index mutual fund is said to provide broad market exposure, low operating expenses, and a low portfolio turnover. It just means that it is tracking the rate of growth in a specific market. So for example, if you have the S&P 500, that is the top 500 companies in the United States. An index fund is a portfolio created with those 500 companies in there, and then it is tracking their growth or lack thereof. I mean, we're in a recession, right? Let's make recession jokes. But let's get into it. What's the difference between an index fund and a mutual fund? Because a lot of these words are used interchangeably. So they're both a diversifying technique where you invest for lower risk and has just a higher diversification and exposure rate. So you're able to invest in many more things versus just putting all your eggs in one basket or one company. The difference is that mutual funds are picked by an account manager or a financial investor. An index fund is a mutual fund, but a mutual fund is not always an index fund, if that makes sense. So if you get an index fund from a big corporation like Fidelity's S&P 500, there's the top 500 companies in the country, and the diversification and what is weighed more is decided by them. So that's where the difference lies. But remember that if you decide to go with an account manager or a financial investor to manage your portfolio, they typically get about 1 to 2% of your annual total. So what that means is that whether your account grows or doesn't grow, they still get paid because they still got to feed their family. You still have to pay if you invest with a big corporation like Fidelity or Charles Schwab's, Vanguard, but typically the fees are much lower versus 1 to 2% because that's huge. Also, index funds are based on a formula which tracks the market rather than to beat the market. But as our favorite Warren Buffett says, time in the market beats timing the market. But with an index fund, you're trying to get that 10 to 12% growth per year over a long period of time rather than trying to get 20, 30, 50% growth, which is just very few and far between. And remember, all index funds are mutual funds, but not all mutual funds are index funds. So now that you know what an index fund is, you're excited. You're like, where do I invest? Where do I invest? I want to go open an account right now. Well, there are several places that you can invest. This is just some of the biggest companies that I know of. You can always do your research, find out the ones that work best for you. The first and my personal favorite is Fidelity. Fidelity is a great place to invest. They have low cost index funds and they have such a wide variety of them. And that's where I have my personal experience with them. But let me tell you something, there are more as well. If you're not into Fidelity, well, guess what? There's Vanguard. Vanguard is also one of the biggest, and I think one of the biggest pioneers in index funds history. So they also have a long history of dealing with index funds and investments overall. Then there's, of course, Charles Schwab, also a big financial institution that deals with if you want to invest in index funds. So they also have a good and wide variety of those as well. So now you have found the platform in which you want to invest in your index funds. And your thought process is, what do I look for when deciding which index funds to invest in? Well, one of the best things you want to look forward to is diversification. That's the whole point of investing in index funds. When you invest in the S&P 500, you're investing in the 500 top companies in the country. They are literally the US economy. So that's what you're looking for. Those 500 companies, all of them can't crash at one time. Well, we hope. But the likelihood of all 500 crashing at one time is very low. So that's something that you're looking forward to. You can also do the total market, which a lot of them has over 2,000 companies in that index fund alone. When you think about it, and the thought process is, what's the likelihood of 2,000 companies all coming crashing down at once? Is very low versus putting all your investments into one or two or even five companies. Next is that you are looking for low fees. I mean low. The percentages is a lot of time what they go for. So they will charge you a percentage to maintain it. So you want to make sure that you are staying below 0.25%, and that's even slightly high. There are index funds that are much lower than that. Do not go for index funds that are trying to charge you 0.5% or even 1%. That's astronomical, because even though it may sound very low, remember that the market on average grows about 8 to 12% per year. If you're missing just 1% over the next 40 years, that makes a huge difference, because it decreases the total amount of money that you have left and the total amount of money you have to let grow. So make sure that you are not buying into index funds that have really high maintenance fees. Next is flexibility. Flexibility is a good thing, especially today where we're all learning, we're all looking around and trying to find out what's best works for us. Flexibility is a good thing, something that you can invest in whenever you have money. You want it to be able to grow with you. So that's something you should look forward to in your index funds. It should be flexible. And something that you should really look into is the performance over time. If you, for example, are investing in a bond index fund and it has a track record of like 2% on average for the last 20-30 years, why are you expecting anything different? And at this age of being like 22 years old, and I'm thinking invest for the next 40 years, is 2% growth really what I want? No. So what I want to do is probably choose something else that has better performance. So you look over the record. It's not always indicative of what is going to happen, because as we saw with the pandemic, a lot of things boomed. So you never know. But if you have to look at that 20-year history and question if it's right for you, you probably shouldn't do it. So look at it and ask yourself, does this really mesh with the goals I have for myself? Now let's talk about the types of index funds. So these are just the types of the popular index funds. I'm really basing this on Fidelity's one, so it might be different, but it's typically the same. They just have a different name for it. So here are the top 10 most popular index funds. Number one, of course, is the S&P 500, which I just said is practically the US economy. It's 500 companies in there. If you look at its 50+ year record, it's average about 10% per year. So making sure that if you want to start somewhere and you really don't want to worry about it, you don't want to do any more research, you just want some good returns, the S&P 500 is really a safe bet. If it goes to zero, what that means is that the US economy is basically worthless. And what's the likelihood of that happening? Well, it could always happen, but you know, it depends on what you believe in. And if a company, let's say, is no longer part of the 500 top companies in the United States, guess what? It gets pushed out and a new company comes in. So you don't have to worry about doing anything yourself. You just buy it. It has typically very low cost across all platforms, and so you invest in it and that's it. Next is the total market index fund, which typically has more companies, like I said, over 2,000 companies in it. And this one really stretches across the country to make sure that they're getting some growth from some medium-sized companies as well. So this is really a good thing to invest in if you're looking to diversify from the S&P 500, or if you think 500 companies is not enough for you and you want more exposure to other companies. 2,000+ companies will probably do it for you. Next is the real estate index fund. So this is tracking the companies that are in the real estate one. So this is where we're starting to get into more of the niche. So if you're a person who is into real estate and you want to be exposed to the growth in real estate, but realistically speaking, you don't have the money to go buy a complex and rent it out. You don't have the money to be doing real estate development, but you still want to be exposed to that growth, you can buy an index fund in real estate. And I suggest that you can try it out. Next one is the large growth index fund. So you're talking about bigger companies. So this is exposing you to the growth of large companies like Apple, Amazon, Microsoft. Experience the growth that other big companies are. It's almost like the S&P 500. They very much share a lot of companies in general. But if you want to really be focused on those top companies and have that exposure in their growth, this is where it's at. Next is mid cap. So we see a lot of companies that are still growing. They're not yet quite large cap, but they're like mid cap and mid-sized companies that are still doing great things. And if you want to invest in that, that is where you go. It's a mid cap index fund. So it's exposing you to the growth of middle cap companies. And these ones have a lot of potential because they're still growing, they're still booming. And you can see some really great results as companies go from being medium sized to like larger and big size. And if there's large, there's medium, there's definitely a small. So there's small caps as well. So as you can see, there was a boom in small businesses during COVID as well. There was a boom in a lot of companies that are growing bigger. So small caps is exposing you to the growth in small companies. Well, this is a risk because a lot of companies that are smaller don't always make it. It's also exposing you to the companies that do make it and become big time. So you will experience all that growth along with them. And because it's not just one small company, it's not just 10 small companies, this is literally hundreds of small companies, if not thousands. You're being exposed to their growth and the changes across so many different companies. Next is similar, which is the emerging markets. So this is one that I am getting familiar with as well, but it seems to have great potential. So companies that you don't know too much about, but it's coming up. It's emerging markets. If you want a little bit of that risk, put some money in there. Next is sustainability index. So these index funds typically track companies that are sustainable to the environment. So there's some percentages, there's some marks that they need to reach in order to be added to this sustainability one. And so companies that are in the green spaces, which is really seems to be growing as well, a lot of companies are striving for. So if they make it into this and you just want to feel good about supporting companies that support the environment, try this index fund. Next is the inflation bond fund. So if you're into bonds and you want to be exposed to bonds as well, but you don't want to go buy a specific bond, you can buy a bond fund. And this is one that Fidelity offers. And next is the Treasury Bond Index Fund as well, which is basically an index fund of Treasury bonds. But it's also something that if you want to buy bonds, but you don't want to buy a single bond, but you want to be exposed to different things, here it is. And now we have reached the last part, which is me just giving you 3 things to be successful when investing with index funds. I have a whole video on beginner mistakes, so you want to go watch it if you're just beginning to invest. These are the 3 things that I think is really important if you want to be successful when investing with index funds. Number 1 is to dollar cost average. What does that mean? It basically means to consistently buy on a basis of maybe weekly basis, daily basis, monthly basis. Just buy across. Do not get scared when the market goes up and down. Just keep buying. Buy the highs, buy the lows. Just continue consistently doing it over however many periods you want to invest. And sometimes you get scared when things are happening, but dollar cost averaging just keeps you consistent and it gets you in the habit of consistently investing no matter what's going on. So dollar cost average, and you will see that over a long period of time you have accumulated a lot of index funds and you have grown your net worth using this method. So no matter what you do, dollar cost average. And you can do this in any of your accounts that you're using, whether it is your 401k, your Roth IRA, or your HSA. Make sure to read up on all of those. I have several videos on those as well. You can watch them and learn how to dollar cost average in those. Number 2 is that the best time to have started investing was over 20 years ago, but you know what the next best time is? Today, not tomorrow. So make sure that if you're already planning on investing, whether it's for retirement, growing your net worth, start now. Do not wait for the perfect time. Do not try to delay it anymore. Just go ahead and start investing. And the last thing said by Warren Buffett, that time in the market beats timing the market. He has bet millions of dollars several times against hedge funds to see who would outperform the index funds. Very few of them do. He has consistently given good financial information for the rest of us who are being more financially conscious, meaning that do not try to time the market where you think this is the bottom. None of us sees the future, so we don't know that. So make sure that you are not trying to time the market, but instead just go in and dollar cost average over a long period of time, and you will probably find great success. So thank you for coming on this journey with me. I have been meaning to do this video. I definitely wanted to make sure I put this information out there because a lot of people do ask me, it's like, what do I invest in? in, and I'm just telling you what I invest in. So go out there, do your research, and let me know in the comments section what is your favorite index fund. But with that, I'm bringing this video to an end. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring the notification bell because I post 2 videos a week, on Tuesdays and on Fridays. Come over because the conversation is always good. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.